When it comes to managing labor pain, many people choose an epidural. And if you talk to enough people about their birth experiences, you'll find that they pretty much fall into two teams. The first, those that love their epidural. The second, those that really wanted to love their epidural. So if an epidural might be in your future or supporting someone that has one is in your future, I'd love to share 3 mistakes to avoid so that you can fall into that love the epidural team and as a result have a positive birth experience. Now, if we haven't met in real life, my name is Alice Turner. I am a birth doula, a Lamaze certified childbirth educator, and on my channel I talk about birth. So if that's a topic that interests you, then you're in the right place. So I want to dive in straight away with a video of an interview that I did with a friend of mine that was willing to share his experience supporting his partner at birth. Let's take a look.
I paid attention more in class when they were talking about the options and what to do if you were not getting an epidural, because I sat there thinking, well, my partner is going to get an epidural, so why do I have to pay attention to any of this stuff? I'm not going to need to know any of this stuff. And then it turned out we were in a situation where she couldn't get an epidural, and then I didn't know any of the stuff that I didn't pay attention to.
So as you can see, they were on the really wanted to love my epidural team. And in their case, something happened that was quite rare, and that is she was unable to get an epidural at all. And so they were left without any strategies because, as he said, he didn't pay attention in childbirth class. In fact, he kind of skipped childbirth education altogether because he wasn't paying attention. He didn't learn other coping strategies, and either did she. And so they had a very challenging birth experience because of this first mistake. And the first mistake is skipping childbirth education. I've heard many times that people say, oh, I don't need to take a childbirth class. I'm planning to get an epidural. No, please don't do this. If you want to have a great epidural, then I want you to have backup strategies to go with that epidural. Because even though it's not very common to not be able medically to have an epidural at all, it is fairly common to experience some side effects from epidurals, or to have the epidural wear off and have some pain break through, to have spots that just aren't covered adequately. If you take some childbirth class and have some backup strategies that you can use to cope, then you will work along with your epidural to create that positive birth experience. So if you find yourself in this boat and don't have any backup strategies, make sure you download the cheat sheet that I have below of physical comfort measures and take a look at that and prepare before you are at that situation. On to mistake number 2. Now this one, if you'll bear with me, I'm just going to share a personal story to illustrate the mistake. I made the mistake myself. So during the birth of my first child, and actually you might have met her if you saw this video on counter pressure, she was actually my pregnant model for that video. Seems like yesterday, but it wasn't. I had an epidural, and during the epidural, I completely checked out of labor, and so did my partner. He and I started acting like it was just another day, and actually, so did our care providers. I clearly remember a conversation that the nurse had with my husband over me. So I was in the bed with the nurse on one side, husband on the other side, and once the nurse found out that my husband was an attorney, she started having an in-depth conversation with him about a lawsuit that she was in about the siding on her house. Now, you remember things very clearly sometimes from your birth experience, and I remember this like it was yesterday. And I felt very disconnected to what was happening with my body. I wasn't paying attention to my contractions. I wasn't paying attention to the monitors. I almost turned off labor and checked out mentally. Now, this isn't necessarily bad. Some people think, that sounds great. But what happens is sometimes when it comes time to push, people have a hard time gearing back up to the work that has to be done in the pushing phase. So if you check out entirely, you can have a harder time mentally getting yourself back into all of the action necessary to push the baby out. And if your support person also checks out, it is harder for them to jump back in and provide adequate support during pushing. So I want you to stay in labor. Do not check out of labor. Pay attention to the frequency of your contractions. How is your labor progressing? Pay attention to what's going on with your care providers. Rest if you can, of course, but always know that you still have a critical part, and that is pushing. The third mistake to avoid to help you be in the love your epidural camp and have a great birth experience as a result is stop moving. So I don't want you to stop moving. That is a mistake. And it's true that once you have an epidural, what movement looks like is going to change. You will no longer be up walking about. You'll no longer be bouncing on a birth ball. But it's important that you do keep moving in the confines of the hospital bed. So what this looks like practically is flipping from a left side to a right side, to maybe wedged up a little bit and leaning on one hip, maybe with a peanut ball between your legs, maybe even sitting up in the bed once the epidural has full coverage, but changing up your position about every 30 minutes. Now, partners can really help with this because they can set a timer for, say, 30 minutes on their phone, and every 30 minutes ask for help from the nurse to change positions. If you have a doula, they can also be very helpful in remembering changing positions with an epidural is so important. The baby has to make their way down through your pelvis, and changing up your pelvis is going to help so much. So what I don't want you to do is get an epidural and just stay in one place for hours upon end. We want to keep moving so that we will love our epidural and have that positive birth experience. Avoiding those 3 mistakes are going to help you have that positive birth experience. And if you want more information about what to do to have a positive birth experience, I pulled together 5 of my favorite videos into a playlist that you can get to right here, and those are the next ones that you're going to want to check out. See you next time. Bye.